an online project, but we're trying to bring it out, not just to be something that you passively read. And those of you who might have gotten the Reconstructionist when we published a newspaper, it's kind of like the next iteration of this place where we articulate new ideas. So it's one or sometimes a couple of essays on a pressing topic, and then we hold webinars on them so people can talk, and we many people are inspired by the initial essays, so they write on it, and what we're trying to do is both have really substantive conversation on hard topics. So one part of it is about the content, but the other part of it is about how we do it together, to do it in ways that honor different perspectives and that celebrates multivocality, and that doesn't presume that we're going to all agree or all come to just one way of being. And I do think it's one of the reasons why, as I said, it takes a lot of work to be a Reconstructionist. And I was joking about a lot of words, but it takes a lot of words sometimes to kind of make space for all of that. But then at the end of the day, also to go out to the streets. There is also, I love that you read the piece about our commitment to social justice as well. I thought that was exactly perfect.
Just a quick comment, and again, I don't know that it's necessarily just Reconstructionist, but this attachment to our 3,000 years of history. Why have we survived? What have we done? The chances of us not surviving seem to be much greater than the reason we did. And logically, I have to believe that's due to evolution, because nothing stays the same. And so, but being able to connect with this long history and this past makes you bigger than yourself.
I think that's exactly right. That's exactly. I say, a lot of times I will hear in the wider world, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I hear it a lot, especially among younger people. And one of the things that I say is that I am religious, because spiritual at the end of the day is frequently a solitary enterprise. And one of the reasons that I'm religious is because being religious puts me in conversation, it puts me in relationship and in conversation, both vertically, I'm not so good with directions, vertically and horizontally. It puts me in conversation with my ancestors who came before me, and presumably with the next generation after, and then it puts me in conversation horizontally with all of you. And you just said it so well. That means it's something larger than myself. And I think it's really essential. I have a theory about why, I think you're exactly right, that evolution, I think, absolutely has everything to do with our survival. If we didn't change, there's no way we would have survived. The Israelite religion was a cultic religion based on animal sacrifice at a particular location in Jerusalem. And if that was all we could be, if that was all we were, when the temple was destroyed in 70 CE, the Israelite religion would have disappeared. But instead, because there was an evolution, now they didn't understand it as an evolution, they didn't have the kind of scientific self-awareness that we have, but had the rabbis not imagined and created a whole different way of being that was far more portable, it would have disappeared. And instead, there was this evolution. What we have that they didn't is the self-conscious awareness that of history, of modernity. And so then that was part of when in response to Joy's question, that people felt constrained that they couldn't act. They had that self-awareness and they didn't feel empowered to make the change. And what Kaplan was so rigorous in saying is, yes, we can use that awareness and we can introduce that evolution ourselves. I am 100% certain that if Judaism, the breadth of Judaism, did not make space for women to be religious leaders, for women to be active, co-equal participants in religious life and rabbis, that I would have exited Judaism. Because why would I? For me, there are many Orthodox women where this works for them, but for me, it would not have worked to be in a place where I was a second-class citizen. But because there was evolution, because there was self-conscious Reform movement did it at the same time as the Reconstructionist movement, and RSC from its first year admitted women, there was a space. There was a space for me to enter in and to be nourished and also to contribute. So I think that the evolution is what, is what keeps us very vital. I will also say a deep preoccupation of mine is about resilience. I talk a lot about Judaism, about resilience practices that we can learn from Jewish teaching. As a general, I don't believe at all in any kind of essentialism, but I think probably it's just another way of talking about evolution, that there is, I think, hardwired into Jewish experience a kind of resilience, both about culturally and also collectively and also individually. And that's something, I have a podcast called Hashivenu, Jewish Resources on Resilience, that I explore. And I think that it's just, I think that our people, collectively, we have lived through hard times, and we know how to do it. And so that when we are struggling, in our present moment, there are things from our past that we can draw on to help us get through. I think first and foremost, the commitment to community and the recognition that even when we are suffering, we also have to celebrate, I think, are maybe two of the biggest things that our ancestors and our tradition teach us again and again and again.
To me, Reconstructing Judaism, the most important thing is that we're welcoming, that we open our doors. Anybody who wants to come and pray, come. If your mother is whatever and your father is whatever, you have a Jewish parent, come. It's all right, you're Jewish. The other thing, my first recollection of going to a Reconstructionist synagogue was in 1970, and I was in Denver.
Oh, the name of the rock.
And I was doing an internship in radiology, and I was invited to go to their High Holy Day services, and they were the best services I had ever been up to that point in time. It really, really left an impression with me.
I'm not surprised that you're here, because that was a very lay-led
But at any rate, I wasn't there for very long, but still, they were very, very welcoming. And the other thing, in the 70s, I was very much into yoga. And the thing that bothered me was that yoga is wonderful, but everything is around yourself, and it is not community. It's not you're not part of a community. You might meditate with them or go to classes with them, but you're not really part of the community. And to me, your religion is what, and you do your community outreach and everything for your religion, whereas yoga is internalized.
Yeah.
And it's just missing something in the long run. It's missing.
I think that it's very interesting. I mean, just two quick points. One is, I think that one way to think about a Reconstructionist approach to community is that, and that welcomeness that you were talking about, is that recognition that anyone who wants to throw their lot in with the Jewish people, okay, that's the barrier, not who's your mother, or that is, sometimes we talk about belonging and believing and behaving, and I think especially at our moment in time, behaving is really important. Not necessarily are you a halachically observant Jew, but actually enacting your Judaism, and especially through communal involvement, I think is a really, really important, and that is, we have so much opportunity not to engage in any way, that's very, very important. And I think the other piece is that, the Reform movement, all of liberal Judaism is an effort to come to terms with modernity. In pre-modern times, the Jewish people and the Jewish community, we understood ourselves solely in collective terms. I mean, think of our liturgy. Our liturgy is all we, Ahava Rabbah, Ahavtanu, we are loved by a great love, or Ashamnu, Bagadnu, we are guilty. Everything is in the collective. We understood ourselves that way, and the larger world understood ourselves that way. There was no there was no way that individuals didn't have status in the pre-modern world. You were always seen as part of a group, and especially in Europe, that group was religious. You were Christian, you were Jewish, you were Muslim, and what modernity introduced, one thing was scientific thinking and the Enlightenment, so challenging the religious understandings and the idea of supernaturalism, and the other was new political structures, including the emergence of the nation state and all of us as individual citizens of that nation state. So that's really, really challenging, because for the first time, and that was Spinoza's situation, and all of us have followed after him, for the first time, he could step forward as an individual separate from the Jewish community. So I was talking earlier about Mordecai Kaplan being excommunicated. In pre-modern times, you were excommunicated. The threat of excommunication was terrifying, because that meant not only, it's not just like the Amish where you're shunned, where they're not talking to you. In the pre-modern Jewish community, that's how you made your livelihood, that's where you lived, that's how you found connection. So the threat of excommunication carried a lot of weight. That doesn't exist in the modern world. We could be individual citizens. We could cast off. We could separate ourselves from the individual, from the collective. So all of it, Reform Judaism, and then Orthodoxy, and then conservative, and then Reconstructionism, were all efforts to come up with some understanding of how to deal with this new environment. Even as now we've got postmodernism on top of modernism. So the Reform movement, the core principle is commitment to individual autonomy. What the individual decides, ultimately what the individual decides goes. And Reconstructionism, we really care a lot about individual autonomy, for sure. And we also work very hard to look at the whole, to look at the community. And this is hard because I know Britt's at Arcadia, and my wife's a professor there, and we went to a Hillel dinner several years ago, and I was talking to someone who was there, the husband of a board member, and he said, "Don't tell me about Reconstructionism." I said, "Well, we don't believe that the Torah was revealed at Sinai. We don't believe in supernatural." And he said, "That means you don't believe that God is going to punish you?" And I said, "No, we don't believe that God is going to punish us." And he said, "Oh, how do you get anybody to do anything?" So on the one hand, it's very liberating. We're all here. We all think it's really important to be a part of the community. But on the flip side, there are a lot of other people who are not so convinced by it. So I think part of the work is how do we get people to understand that a voluntary contraction of individual autonomy to joyfully participate in the community. That's, I think, part of that's part of our challenge. And so it's a tremendous opportunity, and it's a challenge. I think I probably should wind down. It's so wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much. So I hope you'll pick up some of we brought some pens. We have some really good pens, and some information, and the other brochure, and keep an eye out for for our newsletters and events that we'll do, and we'll come up to you, and please feel free to come down to us in Philadelphia. So Shabbat Shalom.